first meeting for calendar year 2018. You have a copy of the minutes of our November meeting as part of your package. The chair will now entertain a motion for the adoption of those minutes.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. McCants?
Move that we adopt minutes from the last meeting.
Okay. It's been moved that we adopt the minutes of our last meeting. Is there any unreadiness? There being no sign, all those in favor, let it be known by a show of hands. Opposers? Motion carried. Thank you so very much. What I'd just like to do as a formality this afternoon is to allow the members to introduce themselves, and since we have a new member sitting to my far right, let's start from my far left and give the new member an opportunity to take 2.5 minutes to tell the world everything there is to know about her. So we'll start from my left with the introduction of our commissioners here this afternoon.
I'm Sanjanetta Gilbert Bush.
Brian Mann.
Walter Bush.
Carol King.
Doug McCants, and there's nothing to tell.
Dallas Hanbury, and I'll echo Mr. McCants on that. Nothing to say.
And I'm Cindy Keeping, and I live in Capitol Heights, have for the last 12 years. Lived in 3 different houses, renovated 6 houses, and it's a pleasure to be here, and I hope I'm a good asset for the commission.
And ma'am, it's a pleasure indeed to have you as a part of this august body, and we look forward to working with you as we continue to ensure that we do the biddings of the Historic Preservation Commission. My name is Richard Bailey. I'm honored to serve as the chairperson of this commission. We have one of our duties this afternoon to elect officers, so the chair will just first of all recognize who the officers are. Our vice chair, Ms. Carol King, and as I just mentioned, I serve as the chair of this body. So we will now open the floor for a motion for nomination for the vice chair. Is there any nomination for vice chair of the Historic Preservation Commission?
I'll nominate Carol King.
Okay. Ms. Carol King has been nominated as our vice chair. Is there any other nomination? Is there any other nomination? Okay, well, we'll just do it as a formality. All those in favor of Ms. Carol King, just let it be known by a show of hands.
That's one.
Yes.
That's one.
Beg pardon?
That's one.
Vice chair. Okay. So that's unanimous. Yes. Thank you very much. And now for the chair of the Historic Preservation Commission, the chair will now entertain a motion for nominations.
I'd like to nominate Dr. Bailey.
Okay. All right. Richard Bailey has been nominated. Any other nomination? Any other nomination? Any other nomination as a formality? All those in favor, let it be known by a show of hands. Unanimous. Thank you very much. Let's do this. I don't think we've ever done this before. Ms. King, would you just like to say something since you've been elected as the vice chair of this organization? Would you just like to make a statement?
Sure, Dr. Bailey, thank you. I think it's definitely a privilege and a pleasure to serve, to represent the historic preservation community here in Montgomery. I think this, like you said, august body is really coming together and making some progress for our rich architectural heritage that we have here in Montgomery.
Okay, thank you very much. All right. As we proceed for 2018, is there anyone who just has a burning desire to say something before we begin our deliberation for this afternoon in 30 seconds or fewer? Does anyone just has a burning desire to say something? Okay, we'll start with our agenda, old business review of draft of outbuilding guidelines. Has everyone had an opportunity to look at those guidelines for outbuildings so we can submit something to the Architectural Review Board?
This is what I put together based on the discussion we had in November. And if there are any changes that you feel need to be made or anything that needs to be clarified, we'll take this to the Architectural Review Board. We'll also send it out to the historic districts for review and comment. And then once we have gotten some input, we'll put it up for adoption.
Okay. Yes, you about to say something?
No, no, sir.
No.
No.
Oh, okay, all right. Is there anyone who has any objections to anything we've already outlined here, any kind of modifications, so we won't have to just go down the list with what we are recommending?
What I'm looking at,
Sure, go right ahead.
you got shed or gable roof, but you don't mention
I can't hear you.
shed or gable roof, shed or gable roof,
Yes,
but you don't mention anything about a hip roof. Is that, did we discuss that?
we did. That a shed roof or a gable, or even a hip, but generally unless you build one, you're not going to find a hip roof on a shed, would be compatible with a building, but not something that looks like a barn.
Okay, is there
I mean,
anything else?
is there another roof you think we should consider? I can put hip on there
just
because that would be
noticing
compatible.
I'm not hearing you too well, but shed or gable is fine, but I noticed you didn't want.
Can
the
you
gam-
speak in the microphone? I can't,
I noticed you didn't want the gamble roof and all of that,
right.
but I didn't see anything wrong with the
You don't see anything,
hip roof.
you don't see a hip? That's why I was saying I can add a hip.
So you can add it.
Sure.
Okay.
This is draft. That's what I said. I
Yeah,
didn't,
oh,
I
sure.
didn't have it on there, but we can, hip roof would be appropriate.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay, so everybody understand what we're saying? Commissioner Bush just expressed a concern about the absence of the hip roof, and Krista said she can add the hip roof. Is everybody on board with that? Anybody has any burning objections? Any burning objections? Okay. Is there anything else we need to say about this so we won't belabor the point? Can we just suggest that it looks pretty good as
Yes.
written? Does anybody have any kind of burning objections? Okay. All right, Krista, what we're saying is good to go as we have it outlined here in our agenda for this afternoon.
Okay. I will get that out. I am preparing the Architectural Review Board agenda this week. So I will get that. I will also include that flow chart that I showed you all about kind of the if no, that it kicks it over to the review process. And we send the ARB agendas out to all of the neighborhoods as well. So but I will also email it to my neighborhood contacts and tell
Okay.
them that they need to discuss and get comments back to us.
Okay, moving right along, honorary registry. Commissioner Long is not here this afternoon, so we'll proceed to new business historic designation petitioner, expansion of North Hull Historic District, Old Alabama Town. The chair will now entertain discussions.
Dr. Bailey?
Yes.
Several years ago, this had come up for discussion. Mary Ann Neely thought that the entirety of Old Alabama Town had been designated. And from what I understand prior to my tenure is that there was a petition prepared some years ago. It was done in conjunction with a potential designation of City Hall. The powers that be decided that they really didn't want City Hall designated, and the other nomination just kind of fell off the radar. It just never moved forward. I don't believe there was any objection to it. It just was kind of a package deal, and nobody unpacked the package. But the mayor has signed the consent forms to designate the rest of the property because it is city property.
Okay, all right. Is there anyone who does not understand what Chris has just said and what we have in the package for this afternoon in terms of expanding Old Alabama Town. Is anyone who's not familiar with Old Alabama Town? Is anyone who's not familiar, so we can ensure that we're moving forward with a complete understanding of what we are discussing? Oh, yes. Oh, okay. Is anybody who's not under complete comprehension of what we are doing here? Is there anyone who, I'm sorry, yes.
Mr. Chairman, are we being asked to designate, or consider for designation, Old Alabama Town? And considering the fact that all these structures were moved from some other location?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean,
Well, we're expanding the district,
Yes,
not redoing the entire thing. We're just adding to it. Is that correct?
yes.
Right.
And while moved and relocated structures tend to pose an issue for the National Register of Historic Places, there is not a provision that a structure needs to be in situ for it to be designated locally. But you're right. I mean, in the preservation world, we would call Old Alabama Town a building zoo. We have buildings that are sitting next, some of them were originally in those locations, but then we have other buildings that were brought in that never would have been located next to the building it's next to in the context that it's been placed in. It's like having gorillas and penguins next side by side at the zoo. I mean, they're both animals and they're both in a zoo, and that's about all they have in common. So that is a valid point. It is not something that would bar it from inclusion under our code.
Okay, anybody else? Do we need to discuss, is there anyone who has a burning question about any of these? Or can we just give our blanket approval to all of these?
Well, this is you would be making a recommendation to
Yes.
City Council that you feel that the proposed expansion meets the criteria that is set forth 1, 2, 3, and 4. 1, 2, 3, or 4, actually. And it's a recommendation to council. City Council has the final approval.
Okay?
And it would then place these properties under
Sure.
review of the Architectural Review Board.
Right. Is everybody on board with 1, 2, 3, and 4? Anybody has a burning question, or even a faint question for that matter, about 1, 2, 3, or 4? We just want to hear from you. Okay? All those in favor, let it be known by a show of hands, voting approval here. All those in favor of voting approval for the expansion of this district, let it be known by a show of hands. Unanimous, Christian. Thank you very much.
Carol, did you decide to vote?
I did, yeah.
Okay.
Was that-
Yeah, unanimous.
Oh,
Thank you.
right, well, yeah.
So I'm sorry, we talked about recusal earlier. Not that she needed to, but if
Yeah.
she wasn't comfortable voting that,
We did inquire, and since we don't actually own the property, the city owns the property.
Sure, that's right, City of Montgomery.
yep.
Okay, thank you
Okay.
very much. Topics for HPC presentations. We'll move to that section.
Since our meetings are televised until 6:30, for the newer members, we discussed last year having presentations on a variety of topics that would be kind of educational and of interest to the public, because the videos are also on YouTube, so someone can go to the city website and watch the meeting as well. So I just put together a list of possible topics. I've had one volunteer. Dallas said that he would do a presentation talking about the resources at the county archives to help familiarize people with different historic resources, source material.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. You know, the Montgomery County Archives has been in existence since 1996, but it's been in multiple locations. And I think it would be good to make the wider community aware of it. Try as we might, we don't reach everyone. So I can discuss, do a brief overview of that or something totally unrelated. It's up to the commission.
Sure.
On what they want to hear.
In fact, I think basically anything we say about the county archives will help to advance what that organization does, because I truly feel that many people in Montgomery don't know we have a county archive.
And we work hard on that, but any opportunity such as this to make the wider community aware, I'll definitely leap at it. So, yeah.
And see, while we're talking about that, all of those magnificent resources that we have at the county archives, you'd be surprised how many people go to the state archives looking for something that's really housed at the county archives.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, and so we can definitely bring awareness to the resources we have.
Right.
Right.
In other words, what we are saying here with this discussion is that we have 2 archives in the city of Montgomery that are located basically about 3 or 4 blocks apart.
That's true.
And while many people know about the one that's immediately south of the Capitol, very few people know about the one that's closer to the center of downtown Montgomery. And what we could do with that discussion is just allow the county archives to occupy more of the limelight as a place for research here in the city of Montgomery.
That's true. That's true.
So that would be a very timely presentation that we can make.
Sure. So whenever we want to have that take place, I'm
okay. All right. Any? I'm sorry. Go right ahead if you want to.
No, that's all, Dr. Bailey.
Sure. Yeah. Is there any other topic that you feel we need to add about to our list for possible discussion? What's really burning in deep inside of you? You think people really need to know that we can bring to the table and leave people with an ooh-ah kind of feeling upon their departure?
Christy, we have that 50 years of preservation in Montgomery that we did for basically the celebration of the Historic Preservation Act. That's sort of before and afters of a lot of the structures here in Montgomery that, we can do. And actually that would be in somewhat of a celebration of the 50th anniversary of landmarks too.
Okay,
If you want to do that.
that would be, I think, interesting.
Okay.
Good to do.
Any other topics? Let's just search our souls for just 35 seconds. What is it that you think the general public really could benefit from hearing from this body in the form of a speaker, 20, 25 minutes, that really, as we said, would give them a renewed interest in our fair city, or to actually open some new doors of interest? What are some of those topics?
Well, Dr. Bailey, there's a couple of things. I'm not sure if it's on this list, but I think we're all aware that a lot of people do want to, particularly, well, in the historic districts especially, want to, people want to purchase these homes, but I think they're afraid to do so, not knowing the resources available when it comes time to work on these homes. And I think that if we could have some sort of presentation centering on resources available to folks, I think that would go a long way.
I do too.
Who would be a possible speaker on such
Well,
a
that
topic?
that's a question for Christy. Who could we? I'm totally unaware of who we could reach
Sure.
out to. But I think it's something that would be very helpful.
Right.
You're talking about basically the care and feeding of your historic house, not the purchasing of it.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. So
Okay, because it kind of apples and oranges.
Well, right. People see some of these purchase prices are very affordable, but that obviously comes with the the later cost of repair and renovation. Exactly.
And that may be something that we decide to break down into smaller pieces,
Segments.
where we have someone who may be able to discuss windows and how to get painted windows open. And I've got some wonderful tools that will get painted windows open.
Well, that may
And
be coupled with the anatomy of the house.
we talked about anatomy of the house, but we could also talk about, we might be able to have someone address code issues, because if
that'd
you
be
go into
really
a house where the power's been turned off for 6 months and it doesn't pass an electrical inspection, you got to bring it up to code, which is problematic with houses that have been vacant, and we've certainly had a number of those in the districts, where because utilities have been disconnected, it's a much bigger job than someone might think it is.
Yeah, that would be really good.
Yeah.
The code issue, the code thing, which kind of
ultimately
dovetails
ties in.
into
Yeah.
what you're talking about too, yeah. Yeah, I
Kind
think
of
that
walk
would
them
be
through so they're not, you alleviate the fears. At least
Exactly,
they know the
and help
worst case
educate
scenario.
people about what they're getting into and give them some confidence going forward.
Stir a love up for the
Yeah,
old
well,
house.
I think the love is there. It's just how to proceed.
Right.
I envision some fake rats and snakes in that presentation.
I've seen those.
Yeah. Fear in the old house. I'm just for comic relief.
Right. So we have basically two topics on the table. Are there any other topics that you think the public can really benefit from hearing some additional information or information for the first time? What are some of those topics? Yes.
Well, I mean, I think I think this list plus to
Sure.
the other two.
Yes.
For sure, because there's some really good topics here.
Right. Are there any other topics?
Dr. Bailey?
What have you heard someone say about Montgomery that you think we could bring to the table and offer as a professional topic of discussion? Have you heard people who might be visiting here or people who've been living here for 30 years or so say something about the city that you think we could illuminate for their understanding? Mr. Smith, yes, I was just about to call on you. He's a person who's come to Montgomery. What is something you think that people could really benefit from learning more about the city of Montgomery or Montgomery County?
Well, two significant locations, and I don't know if this is on. One would be, I mean, this is just something that just came to my mind, the Selma to Montgomery National Historic Trail. Particularly just if nothing else, the segments in the city of Montgomery and Montgomery County, and then, maybe some significant sites along the trail,
Sure.
such as St. Jude or, as we heard, I think a couple of meetings ago, Lovelace School, the history of that school, and also the city of St. Jude as maybe a separate topic. Those are just two that just came to my mind that are significant.
Sure. And just as we said we would expand on some topics, we could even have one person or two persons who were a participant in the 7th of Montgomery March who could come and speak, or one person who was even an observer on that day to come and speak. And I don't think there are any descendants of Henry Lovelace still living in Montgomery. I think they've all died out. Am I correct?
I think so.
Yeah, I think basically all of the descendants of Henry Lovelace. In fact, I know a descendant of one of his wives who lives in New York, but I don't know if that person would be available. I could contact that person. But if we could just expand on some things, and I think the public could really benefit from some of the things that we could bring to the table.
Well, and I also think, particularly along this train of thought here, is that not just benefiting from in terms of learning, but also in terms of collaboration with us. I think it's an opportunity to engage with the community instead of them engaging with us.
Yes.
I think this is a line of thought we might want to pursue, particularly St. Jude. There's a lot of collaboration opportunities there, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. In fact, if we could just have a person to come before us and give a speech or spiel on the history of St. Jude.
So, period.
All the
So
way
which
from-
one of you wants to contact someone at St. Jude to do that?
I could do that.
Yes, yes, yes. I think people will really find an interest in knowing the early days of St. Jude. All those people who think that St. Jude was established where it's located today would be surprised to know where that community, or at least the first house, was actually located. It wasn't where it is today, and how the place got its name, if you know what we're saying. The kind of expenditures were involved, the kind of persuasiveness that the early leaders had to go through to get that place to be what most of us came to see it as. I think the public really would really want to hear that. The early days of St. Jude, if you will, when you had a hospital, a school, and a church there for the first time, that hospital being one of the first integrated facilities in the Southeast. I think people really want to hear those stories.
Definitely, yeah.
Another thing, Dr. Bailey.
Yes.
I'm curious, the history of Nat King Cole and why we don't bring that up a lot in Montgomery. Wasn't he born here?
Let me tell you, I gave a speech, and I think we're on television. I gave a speech at Nat King Cole's church a couple of years ago for Black History Month, one Saturday afternoon. And when I had finished speaking, the pastor who was sitting next to me with his arm folded said, "Keep talking. I'm enjoying this." So I started rambling, and I mentioned that Nat King Cole had been a member of that church, and
They didn't know.
no. And his father been the assistant pastor, and his mother been the pianist.
See?
And from that day on, we've had a Nat King Cole celebration here in the city of Montgomery. And this is what we're talking about, how many people even
Right.
who have ties to Montgomery that people don't know about.
Right.
And that makes for an interesting topic also.
Exactly. And I mean, it would be neat to have a statue of him, you know.
Surely.
God, Hank Williams, Nat King Cole was international.
Mary Ann Neal and I gave a tour of Monroe Street. I think it was, I know we gave one the day after Thanksgiving. We also gave one, I believe it was in September. And for the September tour, as the crowd was about to disperse, a young lady walked up to me and she said, "I was at St. Hank Williams' funeral."
Oh, wow.
I attended St. Hank Williams' funeral. She said, I was only 3 years old, but I was there.
Still
And I
counts.
said to her, I still think the crowd would have loved to hear someone who had attended Hank Williams' funeral. And for those persons who might remember Hank Williams' funeral, remember somebody talking about Hank Williams' funeral, all of those musicians who, or the singers who sang at his funeral, that was one funeral. And the procession going to Oakwood Cemetery, how the streets were lined with people, how cold that day was. I mean, it's something that just gives you goosebumps to realize what that funeral was like. Right. And to have someone just give a talk on Hank Williams' funeral, it would just be magnificent. I think people would really want to hear something like that, or tell the story of some of the other things that happened here at City Hall. Even if a person could come back and relive Rosa Parks' trial. Talked about the trial that was held here at City Hall. I think people want to hear, but that's your call. I'm just throwing out some suggestions. Whatever you think would really have some kind of significance for the public, I think it's something that we could do, but it's your call. So of the topics we mentioned, which one do you think, but beyond the county archives, which of these topics do you think we need to add to our list?
Well, me personally, I know 3 people that graduated from St. Jude's, and I can get in contact with them easily
Surely.
to find out and see if they're very well-spoken people.
Okay.
And I think they'd be very proud to talk about St. Jude's. So that's something that's feasible in my mind.
Sure.
I'd like to find out if there's somebody that can talk about Nat King Cole.
Surely. Okay. Excuse me. Do we need to add these topics to our list, St. Jude and Nat King Cole? Can we think so?
Yes.
All right. Let's just take a vote on it so it makes sure we're not running roughshod over anybody. Let's take Nat King Cole, for example. All those in favor of adding Nat King Cole to our list, let it be known by a show of hands. Nat King Cole. Okay, it's unanimous. All those persons in favor of adding something about the history of St. Jude to our list, let it be known by a show of hands. Okay, unanimous. So we're adding Nat King Cole, Christie, and St. Jude, history of St. Jude, to our list. All right. Is there anything else regarding topics for the HPC? Yes.
How about the historical architecture and for this city,
Okay.
and some discussion with respect to how that was chosen and how that came about, rather than just continue to build in a certain
You mean for this building?
architecture style? No, not this building. I'm talking about the historical houses and architecture in this city.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So someone knows a lot about it, and they aren't all the same, they aren't, you know. So maybe somebody got it. I know Ms. Neely knows all about it. So
Right.
something like that. Maybe we could.
And we also have an
expand on that.
architect on our commission here who can give a spiel on architecture in the city of Montgomery. In fact, he and Mary Ann Neal could do a joint presentation on architecture.
They willing?
Who's that?
He's asking who is that?
I know exactly what you're talking about.
But that's a good topic if we want to add that to our list, architecture in the city of Montgomery.
Well, we do have Montgomery's architectural styles on the
that number.
list.
Yes.
And we do have on our website a style guide that
Okay.
has been put together that talks about some of those. It's got some illustrations in it that talks about what the different features of those houses are, and that could be an introductory piece to it.
Okay.
If Mr. Bush would like to speak in more detail about Montgomery's architecture.
All right. So, is there anything else we need to say on that so we can keep moving? Is there anything else?
Christy,
Yes, I'm sorry.
you go, ladies first. Go ahead.
Thank you. I'm concerned, I don't know whether this would be part of our project or not, but I'm really concerned about Patterson Court
Patterson Court, okay.
at Alabama State University, and it has such a great significance for the college. I mean, well, not college now, but university. Would that be out of step for
No.
us to?
What do
Try
you want
and
to
save.
pursue with Patterson Court?
I want it saved. It's in the air that it will probably be torn down. And I would like for it to be saved.
Well, I know, not to interrupt, but Patterson Court is actually standing in the way, since Alabama State University owns that property. And they purchased it with the I think with the future purpose of tearing that down and putting a hotel or some other facility in that space. Maybe leaving some green space as well, but that property is strictly owned. I mean, it's owned by. I should say the university purchased that property with tearing it down in mind. I think. I don't think there was ever any intentions to maintain it, except until they got to that next phase, in their development plans. So that's my understanding. I recall that from years ago. So I don't think you can do that. I'm not saying it can't be done, but I know that that was part of the reason why they purchased that property.
So, Commissioner Bush, you're saying you would love someone to give a speech on Patterson Court with the objective of maybe saving Patterson Court?
Yes.
Talking about the historic significance of Patterson
Yes.
Court?
I think so, because if I'm not mistaken, it's the second public housing in the United States. It's very important.
Right, right. So who would we get? Do you have a person in mind who could give that talk?
So think of somebody.
Yeah, let me think of something.
But in the meantime, you're saying we should add it to the
Yes.
list?
Yes,
Okay,
I
we'll
just
add,
wanted to know if that was within our boundary.
yes, we'll add Patterson Court to the list. Anything else?
Well, it's Gary Varner. He knows a lot about that.
Charlie Varner?
Yeah,
Okay,
he should know a lot about that.
right, okay. But we'll add it to the list is what we're saying. We'll add to the list. Okay, good enough. Okay, thank you very much. Developing an annual work plan for 2018.
I don't think there's anything on here that y'all haven't seen before, if you read your agendas last year. So this is really for the benefit of our newer members, because we have 4, I think, new members that have been appointed in the last year. There is a list of powers and duties that are in the city code of what falls under what the HPC can do. And number 14 kind of throws the barn door open and says, whatever else you think is reasonably necessary to carry out the purposes and responsibilities. So you've got kind of a blank slate to be able to do education programming, preservation programming.
If you look at E at the very top of the page, the last sentence, we like to ask the question, can we do more than just pass out signs? That's the question we want to handle this afternoon, this evening. Can we do more than just pass out signs?
First of all, Mr. Chairman, forgive my interruption.
No, you're not interrupting.
Did we ever come to an agreement on whether or not we're going to change the signs for historic building or historic district signs? Did we decide?
Nothing was ever decided.
I
Now, I will mention, and I'm not gonna, there has been a change in ownership with the company that we got the signs from. And if we end up doing a whole lot of signs, we're gonna have a conflict and we won't be able to use them. So this may be a good opportunity to revisit that and decide, are we going to have 2 signs? Does everybody get a gold star? Or do we just recognize those properties that have been well preserved and maintained? And do we do something that's a little more substantial or iconic than the metal signs we have? We are currently using the same logo that Landmarks Foundation uses because Jimmy Loeb started both organizations, and this board has no brand identity as far as that goes. So there are certainly things to consider if you all wanted to form a committee to look at that, both in terms of style, material. You know, do we just brand it and hand them out versus having them personalized? Well, personalized, we put the district and the year of construction on the sign. Or does it just say Historic Preservation Commission, Historic Building of Montgomery, seal of approval kind of thing?
I certainly like the idea of something more substantial than the signs we use now.
Me too.
When I walk my neighborhood, I
They
noticed
fade.
that they have faded to the point where you can't tell what they are.
Right.
My preference was for the medallions. I've seen them when I walk around Savannah and Charleston. And I think they're lasting as opposed to what we use.
I think maybe we could shop prices, because I know even at the end of this, you know, what we're doing now, it's still $40, $50. And not every homeowner, and those are substantial, those are nice. So I'm sure the price would be a fair amount more than that too. So it just, I think price is going to be an issue too. So I think we just need to look.
Sure. That's one of the points that we have in our package this afternoon, how the prices increased from $10 approaching $40 and $50. And the fact that we're talking about deterioration of the signs over time, how quickly they're deteriorating.
I know we don't have any money as a board or commission. There are not a lot of homes that come forward in any given year seeking this designation, are there?
To get the sign?
Yes.
There haven't been, and that was part of a previous discussion about revamping the program, kind of rebranding, relaunching to get people interested and excited. I mean,
needs
we have people who have done them for Christmas presents. I think Cindy had, when she was in real estate, would get a sign for someone who was buying a house. But no, I mean, we had just a handful of requests in the last year.
My thought was, I know there are funds that the city councilmen have. I know surely the city of Montgomery has money. We could seek some kind of either funds to help offset the cost, to subsidize it, or to provide them, outright provide them. This is of importance to our city, that these homes be recognized, designated, and preserved.
Well, I mean, every house in a historic district,
Is designated.
it has the ability to do this. So if everyone, how many would
We
you?
have about 2,200 properties that are
2,200
designated.
potential that could come to us asking for us to buy them a sign.
Could we also consider, just if it's a historic neighborhood, could we consider asking the neighborhood association just to get one sign indicating that this is a historic neighborhood, and if there are any special persons or who have achieved some notoriety, and then you want to make a historic building, or historic district sign, or whatever, rather than just continue to try and find a few people in the neighborhood who may be, in fact, be interested in that sign. Why not just get one that would indicate this?
The neighborhoods have signs. They have put signs up at their gateways and district boundaries.
That's a program that Bonds pays for.
Right.
It has that
That's a
that
very,
they have.
I mean, that's when it probably the building our neighborhoods for development and success, that's probably their most utilized task that comes out of their grant program
Is signs.
is the neighborhoods apply to them for monies for their entry signs at the certain points in their neighborhood. So that's somewhat of a resource right there.
Part of the earlier discussion was also that when the sign program was initiated, it was really to promote the historic districts. It was a let's feel good about our older neighborhoods kind of program, so everybody got a gold star. And I think that we've probably grown up to the point where we don't have to give everybody a gold star, that we can say this is a good example of a craftsman house that's retained its details and they get a sign. And I'm sorry, you replaced all the windows in your house, you don't get a sign. I don't know, that's y'all's call about what does this program need to be now. We know where it started, and it was really to raise awareness, but I think to some extent we're beyond that since we have the established districts, but we need to get people excited about getting the signs so they come. But it also may need to mean something other than if you live within the boundaries of a district, you're guaranteed to get a sign, because that's what I tell people now.
I agree with that.
I do too.
Do-
Go right ahead. Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, do you think I suggest we form a committee to look into this, a group,
Sure.
some working members have a working group to get this thing done.
Sure. Okay, let's accept some volunteers.
I'd be happy to
All right,
volunteer.
one and two. Can we get three? Three. We have three. All right. Very good. And do you think you all be able to make a report at our next meeting, or is that moving too fast for you?
That's probably moving too fast.
Okay. This being January, how about April?
That sounds good.
Okay. All right. So you'll bring a report to us by April at our April meeting. Very good. Thank you so much. Commissioner McCann, does that take your concern?
Sure.
Okay. Good enough. All right. Moving right along. Will we do more than just pass out signs? But this body, can we do more than just pass out signs?
Well, I think we're providing an educational resource by doing the monthly programs that we just talked about or
Okay.
enlisted. And since it's televised, they will go out on public access.
All right.
So that touches a lot of this.
What about promotion of the historical preservation and in what's going on in Montgomery now? You know, in other words, that we're a part of making things happen in Montgomery to not only to preserve but to restore and so forth.
Are you speaking particularly or specifically about the downtown area or just Montgomery in general?
Montgomery in general.
Montgomery in
yeah.
general? Okay. Expansion? Okay. All right.
Plus, I have another suggestion too.
Sure.
This is something that's crossed my mind before. There are neighborhoods that are turning 50 and 60 years old. They don't think of themselves as historic. Is there an effort to make these people and these neighborhoods aware you're the next wave? I mean,
You
baby
know-
boomers, you know.
That
I was-
information could very, very well go to the neighborhood associations, because they're the only ones who would,
Speaking to the mic. Speaking to you.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I think information would certainly be good for the neighborhood associations. I think they do a better job of making their people aware of the age of the community and what historic designation can mean for that neighborhood. Maybe we could step in on, when we get to that level. But I suspect we would do better just getting those neighborhoods that have reached that milestone of 50. That would be our job to correspond that information to the neighborhood association president.
Another piece of that would be conducting architectural surveys of neighborhoods that have reached the age, and that includes neighborhoods that are well over 50 years old at this point too, that have not been documented. And in your agenda, you have an example of what the state survey form looks like and how it's filled out and the photographs that get taken to document it. And that is part of the process of building kind of a library, because I don't know if Dalreda is historic. I know it's potentially historic because of the age, but until I survey the resources or have a survey of the resources to look at, I don't know if they meet the criteria until I have something to look at that says, yes, it does, or no, it doesn't. And survey and registration falls to the HPC.
Well, I know for one that, assuming the leadership of Old Cloverdale Association, as I am this month, I asked a question of our members, why does Edgewood not have an association like us? And I want to see why they don't. I guess they are they're finally to the age, but those homes are more than 50 years old. I was curious why they don't have a neighborhood association.
Well, those are kind of two different things. Like a lot of young neighborhoods have neighborhood associations. So just because
Homeowners association.
Well, right.
Right.
And I think they actually do, or at least they're pretty active in the Midtown.
They need to have, maybe it's why do they not have it, maybe I should rephrase.
Right.
I wonder why they don't have a designated historic district.
Well, because they would need to do the process. They would as a neighborhood, they would have to join together to do the survey and registration process.
But do they have an Edgewood association?
I think they do, but they would have to do this commitment too. And then, of course, they'd have to do the paperwork, each structure, research on all the structures, and then there would also have to be the owner signature.
I know one thing, I wanted to reach out to them and see if they needed any help to get that done. I'm going to attend the Cloverdale Idlewild meeting tonight if we get done in time.
Well, and
But they are designated.
the other piece, and this is what they've done in Birmingham for years, is they do a National Register nomination first. You need the survey. That's kind of the baseline for any documentation. National Register nomination does not require owner consent. It's an honorary designation. It's something that they can say, hey, we're on the National Register, yay us. And then they've used that to kind of get support for the local designation, the one that sticks the rules to the property owners. There have been some neighborhoods that felt that their houses were expensive enough, that people had good enough taste that they didn't need it until something went wrong. Why can't you do something about that 3-story Butler building garage someone attached to their house? Oh, because it's not historic. It met all the building codes. There's nothing to be done. So part of it's perception. People think they don't need it or it can't help them. It's just going to be a pain in the rear end until something bad happens. And sometimes that's a good motivator too.
Having just finished this survey for the annex for North Hall Historic District, and there were 16 structures or lots, and it's extremely time consuming.
It's a lot of work.
So if you have a neighborhood with, what Capitol Heights has got?
1,232.
1,200.
I had an intern, and she and I surveyed
It's
450 of
extremely
those one summer.
Yeah, but that's where we reach out to our connections. For example, in the academic community, like Auburn has a public history program.
I've been telling him to send me people who want to know how to
And that is a
learn about architecture.
ready-made student project if there ever was one for a public history student. And Auburn is not the only school in the state that has a public history program. ASU is exploring setting one up. UNA has one. And Alabama is getting ready to hire a public historian too. So there are opportunities to utilize students in this type of work. And Middle Tennessee State, although it is in Tennessee, they have a regional impact. They have many students that work, for example, in Selma, which is just down the road. So there are opportunities to reach out. And
Did you see where MTSU is now offering in-state tuition to Alabama residents?
well,
For their public history.
I certainly know that because I have taken advantage of that.
Okay,
So that's really not, that's nice.
all right. So, where are we on this so we can ensure that everybody's together on what we're saying as we move forward? What is it that we want to do? Yes.
Well, would it be possible to put a package together that we would send to neighborhood associations, making them aware that they could in fact, and how to go about doing this, you know, promoting it? Again, trying to get interest, trying to get historic preservation, not be, you know, a positive spin on it.
We have a map that we have brought from time to time. There's a big map that the city produces. It's a city annexation map. And it has all the different neighborhoods and, you know, all the different, so we can look at that and you know, find out the dates on the incorporation. But and we could contact them. But it's really up to them to want to do it because it's extremely labor intensive. Plus, they have to agree to it. I mean, they have to sign on to it. They have to work their community.
They have to want it because it's extremely.
They have to work within their community to do it.
It's a lot of work.
But if they now
you have absent landlords and all that stuff involved, and you have to write them.
Oh, I know, we're doing it now.
It can be, we started at one time in Hard Estates, and it just was, you know, overwhelming.
I think to some extent that the issue may be more big picture than the nuts and bolts of designation, because part of what you see is, you know, Ms. Taylor has lived in her house for 80 years because it was her mama's house. It's no place special. And I think that maybe the first conversation to have with some of these neighborhoods is that our neighborhoods have distinctive qualities and characteristics, that they have a collective history that is important to the fabric of the city, and the pieces and parts put together do make someplace special. And I think maybe that's the first conversation that needs to be had, talking about the importance of place, the importance of history, the importance of memory. And, you know, that's what's going to get people excited about where they live and excited about preserving their streetscapes or deciding to tackle the slumlords, or, you know, that I think there's a disconnect between preservation and designation and how people feel about where they live. And I think that maybe we need to look not necessarily at doing the surveys and getting people to consent, but to have those conversations about why their place is special.
Well, I think we need to step even further back than that and, you know, determine if these neighborhoods want it even, and be careful not to impose where it's not wanted.
Right. Well,
because that turns people off immediately. Oh, so, you know, you're coming in here where I live and telling me you should tread carefully.
Right. Well, you know, I could see where you could invite a neighborhood to come and then you tell them the history of their neighborhood. I mean, you can move into a lot of places and not know the first thing about it.
I do wonder, and that's a good first step, but I do wonder, I think you have to be careful about telling people what their history is and isn't, because what we may value it for, they may value it for a totally different reason. So, but I think there's
You found that out.
Well, yeah, I mean, you know, and I
Definitely
think,
found
but I
that
think
out.
there's opportunities definitely out there, but we just have to, I think working with the associations is very important, engaging what their needs and demands are. Perhaps it isn't designation, perhaps it's simply
Historical
building a
knowledge.
relationship with them and going forward and seeing what develops from there.
Maybe that might be a better way of doing it.
Yeah, I like
Right.
that too.
And especially with an emphasis on dialogue.
What do they
Two-way
want?
communication.
Yes.
And not advancing a heavy-handed approach, giving the appearance that we know what's best for them,
Oh,
we have
yeah.
all of the answers.
Oh, yeah.
Actually, actively listening to their concerns, their interpretations, their histories, everything, but not giving them the appearance that we know what's best for them. And I think once we do that, we'll find people coming to us,
That's right.
if we can do that.
Well, our service is that we're going to let them know the history of their neighborhood and the value that it brings to Montgomery. Everybody feels good about that.
Right. And you know, if we could just help these neighborhoods to have increased pride in their neighborhoods, we will have gone a long way to achieving our objectives.
Right.
Just to get people to say, wow, I'm proud to live in this particular neighborhood or that particular neighborhood. And I know this as a unique feature of my neighborhood. Something along those lines.
Right.
Mr.
Help them
Chairman,
see it with new eyes.
Yes. Commissioner McCants.
I was just going to make a suggestion.
Sure.
We might want to just, particularly the newer neighborhoods who have just acquired that status of 50 years, perhaps maybe we can invite the neighborhood association presidents or vice presidents to our meeting and discuss this with them, things that we know about these neighborhoods and the process, and see if they, would take that interest back to their meetings, because the only problem we have here that it's sort of like me, they meet at the same time we meet.
Yeah.
That's the only problem, And I'm trying to see if we can change ours, but that's why I say maybe the vice president could step in for the president, so that they wouldn't have to alter,
Right. Right.
Well, and it
let
may
me,
be
let
that
me
there
ask this question. How many of you feel that your neighborhood would have an interest in coming to speak to this body about whatever it is you are doing? Your neighborhood. How many think that your people would come? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. All right.
Well, I am the neighborhood association president, so.
Okay.
And it may be something that needs to be done on a different day and time and in a different venue, because this is a terrible place to have a discussion. This room is not conducive to it.
Well, I think it would be meaningful to go to the associations to where they want to meet,
Well,
wherever that may be.
and they are somewhat organized through bonds.
Yeah,
Yes,
that's
they
why I
are.
say
And their
maybe some
annual
way able to coordinate an
conference that's
event
coming
through
up,
bonds.
But I mean, they are very organized. I
And
mean,
they're comfortable at bonds,
the
too.
ones who want to be organized,
Right.
so.
Okay. I think this is good, real good, because once those neighborhoods see us as an advocate and an ally, which is
Right.
basically the same thing, I think we are really making our mark. This is what we want them to see us as, someone, an agency that's really interested in what they want to achieve. And maybe give them some advice here and there, but not just make, as I said before, give them the appearance we have all the answers. We don't have all the answers. We want to help them to achieve their objective, their mission statement. That's what we're here for. Okay? Anything else on that, so we can move on to the next item? Anything? All right. What about our awards program?
Dr. Beverly, Brian is the other representative for the city, and I'll just pass out this. This is the paperwork that we did last year. This is the call for nominations, the types of award, and our process. You guys can just take one. So we'll actually be meeting this month. If you guys will just look over that, and if you see anything, you think we could have done better last year, or something you think we might want to add, just let us know. We'll be meeting with the folks at Landmarks who will be joining this year. on the preservation awards, which will be given out at our May meeting.
For those of you who are not aware of our awards program for 2017, that program was well attended and it was well covered by the press. So it was an excellent program. We got off to a good start. All we want to do is continue that impetus that we started in 2017. We want to see it grow.
So just look over, and if you can think of anything, another type of award category or some other type of judging that we did, or eligibility, whatever, just let us know. Drop us a note through Paula or Christy, and so we can, review that and add that to our application process for this year.
And be ready to discuss it at our February meeting.
At our February meeting, because
Yes.
right after that, we will actually disperse or get these nominations into the neighborhood, since it's basically a public nominating process.
Sure.
So then we'll have March and April to get the submissions back and have our awards ready to go for our May meeting, May being Preservation Month.
Okay, is there any questions for Commissioner Carol King regarding our awards? Any questions, any concerns?
And we did have 3 committees last year. We had the committee that reviewed the applications. We had a committee that was charged with promotion, which ended up being me because the person failed. And then we had one for the event itself. What type, we did engraved plaques last year.
Awards, right, we had the awards committee.
But we need to, one of the things, Carol and I had both seen them when I was in Lynchburg in the spring. They had, Historic Lynchburg had put up merit awards. So when there were building projects that had won a preservation award, it was a cast plaque that was mounted on the building and not something that hung inside someone's building, because we could do that and certificates. We have, I'll check to see what our budget is. I put a budget request in to cover
Okay.
buying plaques and such again this year, so I'll see what we've got.
Okay, so when we come to our February meeting, let's be prepared to volunteer for some of the committees. And one of the things we want to ensure for our awards program is that we don't have 1 or 2 people doing all the work. We want to spread things out and get everybody involved, let everybody know that your participation counts. And we want to make certain that we invite some of our other city auxiliaries to attend that meeting, Architectural Review Board, City Planning. We want to try to get everybody here and let them know that we all are part of the city operations, and we want to work together. So when we come in February, let's come prepared to volunteer for some of these auxiliaries, and so we can have a wonderful program for 2018, just as we did for 2017. Kristen, do you have anything else?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Mr. Robert Smith, do you have anything you'd like to add? We always welcome you to our meetings, and we look forward to your saying at least 2 or 3 words.
Well, my 2 or 3 words is no, sir, I don't have anything to add, and y'all did a great job.
That's a good 2 or 3 words. Anything from our other commissioners? Anybody got an event coming up you want to tell us all about?
Actually, I do have something I want to plug. So on February 13th at 10 a.m. at the Rufus A. Lewis Branch Library, Fraisine Taylor with the Alabama Historical Commission is going to conduct a workshop on conducting African American genealogy. She's partnering with the Montgomery County Archives on that. To sign up for the program, call the library, because if you've been in that branch, you know spaces. They have some space, but not a whole lot. So give them a call.
Okay.
And I'd like to see some of you all there.
Sure. And by the way, when you see Fraisine, you might want to, we might want to put her in part of our speaker list.
Oh, yeah.
For coming here to make a spiel for genealogy.
Well, you better get on her calendar early, because she is busy.
Sure.
But I'll speak with her, definitely.
Right. Okay.
Well, that reminded me of one thing, since you mentioned Fraisine. We did our last bicentennial roadshow event in Madison Park in December. Had a fantastic turnout. Dallas was there, Carol was there. Have a couple people to follow up with. We are looking at some other locations in the county, but Bonds has asked Regina wants to help with the next one. She's interested in trying to do that through bonds in the neighborhoods, which would be within the city. So if anyone's interested in helping with oral histories or scanning documents or working with them, that's just something that may come up down the road, because the other project is probably looking at Mount Meigs, southeast Montgomery County, and maybe out by the racetrack in the western part of the county.
Old Summer Road.
Yeah.
Anything else from anybody? Let me thank all of our commissioners for coming out this afternoon. Christy Anderson and Ms. Paula Richardson for taking time out from their busy schedule, and Mr. Robert Smith for stopping by. There being no further business, this meeting is hereby adjourned. Thank you.